So a little bit more about this whole trends in franchising and the threats that we have. I had Paul Rocchio on the podcast not too many weeks back. And of course, we talked about the whole joint employer situation. What's your take on it? Where do you think this thing ends up?
Buddy, I'm so frustrated by it because I saw it, a decade or more ago, and it's just like this smoldering heap of leaves that just can't wait to get ignited at certain points. And it's frustrating because the model opens up so many opportunities for people that wouldn't have it otherwise. And anybody that talks to someone who had the opportunity to become a franchise owner or look at that realizes how unique and how special this is. And I've never, as a franchisor, I've never interviewed my staff's people and made the hiring decision for one of our franchisees. I've never looked at a franchise relationship and said, you know what, you need to fire this person. I've never had that direct control. Now, because we do one of three things, have the brand, have the operating agreement, right? Those things, they force us into this channel that says you have to have these things, and now you're a franchise, and now they want to, classify it as joint employer because of that. And I just think that's the hypocrisy that needs to be stomped on and eliminated once and for all. But as long as there's people that make money off of the arguing about it, and we all know, and I love attorneys. I have a lot of good attorney friends, but between lawmakers and attorneys, there's a lot of job security out there. I used to work as a horticulture teacher in prison, and somebody would say something about something that happened in a crime, and I said, well, it's job security for a lot of people, right? There's a lot of people that like that, and I think that's almost the buffoonery that we're in now. That whatever the case is, we can talk about the merits. We can go to Congress and have the conversation, and reasonable people realize that, this is the best thing. This is such an American icon and a model of how to do business, yet we're throwing up barriers that just cost more money. They drive more inflation because we've got to pay our attorneys with revenue we get from charging clients. So it's got to come from some, right?
Yeah, true. I was talking to a non-franchise attorney friend who was telling me about a case that has nothing to do with franchising, but it kind of is to your point. He had heard somebody say, we can't settle on this because then we'll have to stop collecting fees. Obviously, the most unethical way of practicing law, but that's kind of to your point where this whole joint employer conversation is not new. I remember it came up earlier when I was in franchising in the beginning years. And then around 2009, 2010, remember it became a thing again. Then it kind of disappeared for a while, and now it's made its resurgence though in a new, much more vocal way. Do you think this is going to somehow, the dust will settle?
Brother, I wish I knew. Like when you look at what had just happened with California and the settling, to use your term, on the casual fast food hour wage rate. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things, and there's two or three things within that I think are also a slippery slope for us as an industry that we've shown that will settle on an issue that most people don't want to settle, and it's an arbitrary number. I mean, setting a number that someone in a suit in an office thinks is the right number, rather than the market settling that. I know I have a problem with that. And I think there's, like anything unchecked can roll into something that's going to hurt somebody or be a problem. I just don't see that. And going forward, I don't see it ending. I really don't. I think with the push for the unionization of things under, certain leadership constituencies, that's a way that they see this coming to fruition. And I'm concerned about it. I think as a franchisor, I always push back because, and I know you were like this too, Frank, you want to bend over backwards for your franchisees, especially, in the earlier phases, right? You're going to do everything you can.
Anything.
And when you've got to pull back because you're worried about that joint employer, fuzzy line, but that if I give this advice or if I do this for them, they're going to be successful and it's going to maybe make or break their business, but you don't do it because you're worried about that artificial line in the sand. That's the risk that I think we're putting the businesses in by even thinking of negotiating and settling on that.
I was going to say, maybe this is the one that has to go to Supreme Court and be put to bed for once and for all. And this is not the one. This is the one to die on the sword for, right?
I really think it is.
Yeah. I agree. I do agree with you. Let's talk about VetFran. So first of all, thank you for your service. I know you were a tank commander during the first Gulf War. Then you got involved with VetFran kind of early on.
I did, and just one minor correction. I was a tank driver and loader in Desert Storm. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I was a tank commander. But back in the '90s, I was actually in Fort Knox. I was in tank school, and I don't mind having a frosty beer every once in a while, Frank, as I know you and some of our listeners do from time to time.
Uh-huh.
But I was in the E Club when Saddam Hussein invaded Iraq, and that put an end to our last 5 days of tank school. And guys got their orders and got shipped out. And I was in college at the time and withdrew from that semester and went over early to be part of an advanced force of 9 guys that took our tanks off of ships and got ready for the rest of the battalion to come over. But VetFran was something that I know Don Dwyer at the Dwyer Group had a vision for coming out of Desert Storm, and Mary Kennedy Thompson, who is one of my idols and mentors in franchising, and I'm lucky enough to call her a great friend. I had the opportunity to be her vice chair of VetFran and then take over those shoes. But I got a phone call in 1993 from a Vietnam vet in Massachusetts who had heard about VetFran, loved sports and franchising, and heard about this opportunity with TSS at the time. And I didn't know anything about it. And I was embarrassed because here I am, I'm still in the reserves at the time.
Right.
So again, I dug in as I do and found out about it. And that was the first VetFran franchise that I sold and was a part of. And I will say for 20 years after he got out of the business, he and I were great friends and sold dozens of businesses over time and helped people get into franchising or veterans. And it's just such a cool program that the IFA, again, embraced. Mary had a call to arms and a call to dollars to get some momentum behind it and get a dedicated person on staff to help drive the program. And it's brought in over 100,000 people as owners of franchises or in opportunities in franchising and careers. We've had Operation Enduring Opportunity, a great campaign in 2014 through 2015 that saw almost 150,000 people come into franchising in career paths and starter jobs and opportunities to transition from the military into franchising as a career path. And man, that's good stuff. The fact that it made such an indelible impact on it. Last week, I had the opportunity to talk to these franchise forum in Atlanta, VetFran, and about the path that, not just franchisors, but that franchisees can take, that supplier groups can take, and how simply changing your ad and how you're recruiting people can speak to veterans and open up opportunities for veterans so that they identify that, hey, this is a company that understands maybe some of the challenges that veterans face, maybe their reserve call or National Guard service, which we actually have one of our team members who's out for 3 weeks right now doing one of his advanced trainings. And yeah, it's a little bit of a disruption to the business if you look at it that way, but it's also a great opportunity for someone to serve their country, to have someone with I think the highest levels of integrity and service commitment to a brand that you could ever have, willing to take a bullet for their last are they willing to talk to a difficult customer for this one? I think so.
I think they could. Yes. I was just thinking we probably shouldn't make any assumption that an emerging founder is hearing this and knows what VetFran is. So maybe we should step back and say what VetFran is, and if they think that really focusing on trying to recruit veterans is an ideal fit for their franchise model, what are some of the things they should do? Yeah,
so good call out on that, Frank. Thank you. Yeah, vetfran.org is a great starting point that talks about some of the basics to what VetFran is, but it's a program of the IFA that helps transitioning military men and women and spouses understand opportunities in franchising, be it franchise ownership or, again, as employees of brands. It provides discounts to franchise fees through most brands. There's a 5-star criteria that someone who really doesn't understand much about the brand can look at those star ratings and get an understanding of maybe longevity of the brand or some of the outreach that they do for veterans, or as you go from a 1 to a 5, generally it's a little bit more proven model for franchise ownership opportunities or development opportunities for veterans, or just a newer brand could be a 1-star and they're just getting going, but it's a way that they give back to the community. There's opportunities for education, for mentorship. That's one of the things that we love to do from the VetFran committee is mentor up and coming veterans into looking at opportunities for franchising. And it's not our job to promote any one brand at all. And we all take that agnostic challenge to make sure that we're not promoting it, but we're helping them identify strengths and weaknesses they've gotten through the military service, ability to follow a proven model, right? And being in the military, you've got a brand, you've got certain SOPs and certain guidelines they want you to adhere to. And as we know, franchising has that as well. It's not a free-for-all. It's not, Joe's Closets or Frank's Sports League organization. We have a brand and a model, and there's certain things you've got to stick to. And veterans have proven that they can do that. They've proven that they've got skills and ability to follow and execute. And that's, again, what you want in franchising. And I say this all the time. It's not a given. It's not a guarantee. I'd like to think that every veteran will lead with integrity and do the right things. But unfortunately, you can't just take that just because they've served in the military. You still have to vet them and go through your normal recruitment and interview and evaluation processes. But again, I think there's an esprit de corps and a culture there that if you can foster that either in an emerging franchisor or in a supplier group or an existing veteran community, there's no better team member you can have than someone who believes in the brand, has served the country, and will fight for you, and your brand and their clients and customers and teammates as a veteran.
Totally. About how many franchisors are members of VetFran?
Man, it's close to 1,200 now, I think, is the latest number. It's always interesting this time of year is the renewal time for brands that want to review their star rating system. They're getting ready to file their FDDs and updating a lot of the material in that. So whether it's, a free membership, which VetFran is not a money maker for the IFA. It's a program of outreach. It's a program to try and help veterans get into franchising, understand all the benefits and the opportunities that exist there. But there are opportunities for sponsorship of VetFran and people to help support the mission and get behind it and do things for it. They've got to fill out the paperwork. They've got to give some reporting of information back so that IFA has an idea of, hey, what is the success rate? I know there was a study, I think it's 2 years ago now, but the net return of a veteran-owned franchise was almost 2 times the average of a non-veteran owned. So, there's things that by that data and Franchise Business Review, and Eric Stites, who's another good friend of ours, Bill Rowan, the work they do to encapsulate some of the data is important, because if we don't know what's going on there, we can't address it, we can't promote it, we can't identify it. And I think that's where the 1,200 to 1,500 franchisors, you might have 200 or 300 that are star rated, that have gone through a little more diligence in their review and their annual submittal of information. So we're trying to increase that. Eric Gagnon with We Sell Restaurants is on the VetFran committee, and he and I were talking about this last week, is there's just a lot of great stories out there. There's a lot of information, and stories to be told, and we want them to be able to tell it. We want to give that conduit. I know the IFA does a great job with that.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.